We now have the classes to which a JSON that we receive from the venues endpoint of the Foursquare API should be deserialized to. We have first the venue root, which should be the root object that we get, which has a response, which has a list of venues, which has a list allocation and a list of categories, and we already have that category and location classes as well. And from the venue logic C# file, we are already getting that JSON. Now we do have to make a slight change in here because remember that we changed the name from venue to venue root. So once we have that, we have access to the generate URL method one more time. And having this JSON and having the classes to which it is going to be deserialized to, it's time to deserialize it. So first, we're going to be needing a venue root object that is going to contain this JSON already deserialized as an object. And of course, because this is going to be eventually of type venue root, it is going to contain a response. That response is going to contain the venues and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and deserialize this. The first thing that we need is the class JSON_convert. And JSON_convert is going to be inside of the NewtonSoft.json namespace. So we're going to need that using directive. JSON_convert is going to contain a deserialized object generic method. The generic method is first going to require what type is the JSON going to be deserialized to. In this case, we want venue root. And so, in the parameters of this method, we're going to have to pass the value or the JSON, which is already inside of our JSON variable. And that's it, really. Let's go ahead and execute this one more time. And this time, we're going to be able to see if the venue root variable already contains the JSON deserialized into C# objects. So I have here the application up and running, and I can log in and I can navigate to that new travel page, and I'm going to have to trigger the location by sending a latitude and a longitude, which will get a location, will generate a request to the URL for the Foursquare API, and we hit the breakpoint. And first we see that the JSON is pretty much the same. It has a bunch of elements inside of it, but then we are already deserializing that into an object. So when we go to venue root, we see that indeed it is of type venue root, and we can start expanding it, and we see a response, and we see a list of venues with 30 elements inside of the list, and we see 30 objects, each of which is a venue object. And if we expand one of them, we can see the categories that has a count of 1, we can see the ID, we can see location, we see a name, which is very cool because we now know that we have obtained one of the venues. If we expand location, we can see its address, we can see the distance from the latitude and longitude that we set, latitude, longitude itself, postal code, state, and if we go to categories and expand the category, we see that this is an office, and we can go and expand whatever object, whatever venue that we have, and we see that these are all C# objects that have come from the internet, from one service, in this case the Foursquare service, in the form of a JSON, and that we have already deserialized into C# objects that we can now start use. So I'm going to stop the execution. And if you remember, this method is supposed to return a list of venue. And we already have a list of venue, because remember that the venue root has inside a response which has a list of venue. So what I'm going to do is assign to that venues variable that I defined earlier, and that is going to be returned from this method, whatever is inside of the venue root .response.venues, which it itself is a list of venues. Now, because currently our venues variable is of type iList, it's just an interface, we have to cast it into the list, which is the type of the local venues variable. All we have to do is write as and write list of venue, which is the type of the variable that we really want. And that's it. Now let's go ahead and test this, and I'm going to remove this breakpoint, but I'm going to add one over here at the new travel page SAML file, right after calling the getVenues method from that venue logic class. Once this breakpoint is hit, then we should be able to see the list of venues without everything else inside of this variable. Right away, without the venue root and the response and everything, just the list of venues inside of this variable. So I'm going to test one more time. I am going to log in, navigate to the new travel page. I'm going to need to set some location. The breakpoint is hit. Let's check out the venues variable. And right, currently this is a task. I forgot that we changed this to be a task, so I'm going to have to await for this to be completed. Otherwise, the value being assigned to the venues variable is the task itself. But once we await it, we are going to get the value that is returned by the method. So let's test this again. We log in, we navigate to the new travel page. We have to set the location for it to be retrieved by the locator. And this time we are going to have awaited for this method. So the venues already has a count of 30, which it means now it is a list and it has all of the venues directly. So now that we have this variable, the next natural step is to start displaying this into a list. In the next lecture then, we're going to be displaying this into a list, but we already know how to display into a list, so we're also going to be learning how to create custom list views without using a cell that already exists, but defining a custom cell ourselves.